gentlemen, last but not the least, I'd like to welcome, please put your hands together for our next panelist, let me introduce him first. His good name is Dr. Sebastian Reimer. I think I'm a bit better with German names in comparison to French names. He's a lawyer, human rights activist, specialist in counter-extremism and combating Islamist movements, particularly the Muslim Brotherhood. He runs Stop Extremism. I think some of you have already received copies of thank you very much for the book, one of the reports they've made. Stop Extremism, which is a European public initiative that advocates proscribing the Muslim Brotherhood and affiliated groups. The initiative has gathered around 1.6 million signatures throughout Europe and is to be presented for debate at the European Parliament in 2020. Dr. Reimer will be speaking in his capacity as a representative of the Stop Extremism initiative. Please, thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the very high-profile and fruitful discussion we already had experienced today. Just let me catch up a few thoughts. I think a very important one was from you, the last question, because it is about what we're actually doing. And as a lawyer, I'm also consultant for public bodies. I'm specialized in the field of legislation. I'm specialized in the field of how do we get things done? What are we talking about? And I want to catch up your thought. I think it's a very important one. We have to be fair. Yeah? That's the beginning and the reason of all. I experienced myself that when you're dealing with extremism, there's one important rule you have to obey every single second. Is you keep yourself balanced, you keep yourself fair, you keep yourself grounded to the reason, and you have to know not only who you are, but actually what do you want. And I'm one of the representatives of the European Citizens Initiative. I started the work on that almost 3 years ago, because we wanted to do something, to provide something meaningful, to provide something effective, connecting to your question. What can be effectively done from legal point of view? And my hypothesis was exactly the same as yours. My idea is poor extremists are not that dangerous than rich extremists. So let's take the money from them. That's the main and the core idea. What was the background of how did I come to those ideas? We had faced a lot of severe attacks across all over Europe. The problem is, and I come back to the thought and idea of being fair. What means fair? We had Islamistic attacks, yes. We had right-wing attack, yes. We had a rise of right-wing political parties all over Europe, yes. That is something all contributing to the split and division of societies and saying the seed of aggression, violence and hate. That is something, as a fundamental rights lawyer, I cannot stay cool when realizing that. When you're talking about fundamental rights, and I'm sorry to say, but personally I feel very sorry for United Kingdom, what's happening right now, what has happened in the past 3 years, because if we can say something like a region is loving you as a human being, the European Union is the most loving region in the world. We can see that it is derived from one of my favorite newspaper, The Economist, who is publishing the Human Democracy Index every year. If you take all these values together, you see that the European Union is doing the best in protecting fundamental rights, in protect human rights. What we did as a European Citizens Initiative is we drafted a directive, a European Union law, which should be implemented all over Europe. The main goal and the main principle of all is and I will try to keep short and not too technical from the legal point of view, the main goal is, it is based, of course, upon European values. That is in the core, the Fundamental Rights Charter of the European Union. Another very important goal is, it is going to protect the education for our children. We know that there is a vicious circle. Declining education is fostering or increasing extremism. Increasing extremism is destroying education. We have to be very sure that this vicious circle is not going to start. And a very important issue is, if economy is doing well, we are not endangered to face extremism, or not that much. We have to take care. It's about the idea of fairness again. We not only have to have just and on legal grounds based public administration. What we have to do also as a society, as a government, as citizens, as employers, as employees, is have to take care of that every one of us has a realistic chance for a good life, has a realistic chance for good income, has a realistic chance to have his children educated in a good way. So we cannot forget about economy too. I will skip, or almost skip the next, it's a bit more legal, just for the ones, you can have the presentation afterwards. I'm very happy to spread it with you, so you don't have to take photos. We had some requirements that need to be met, and I can tell you, driving a European Citizens Initiative is not a very easy task. This legal instrument had been introduced in 2011 in the European law. Since this time, we had 85 tries to launching such an European Citizens Initiative. As far as I'm informed, we had the 5th one to meet the final stage of having or receiving more than 1 million signatures. There had been this had been a quite painful way, actually. We had to have a lot of work on top of our bread and butter job. We had a lot of work, we had a lot of accusation, we faced a lot of angry and aggressive discussions, and we had to meet a lot of legal requirements. It's not easy that you can propose something to the European Union. One of the first requirements is that it has to be based on European values. It has to be according to Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union. You have to balance it in a political way so that this has a realistic chance to get adopted. And of course you have to obey all the European legislation on fundamental rights. How did we try to manage that? The main approach on this directive, this is a 40 pages draft that we provided to the European Union. It is actually ready to publish in the official journal of the European Union. It is a full-featured legal text, because this is my usual job to write law, so I did this for the European Citizens Initiative. The main idea was, let me jump to the next one, to have a combination of existing law. In general, we combined 3 important areas of law that already exist. Why did we do that? Not because copy-paste is very easy and comfortable, but from a political point of view, and I think we had the most, how to say that correctly, we had one of the most critical European Citizens Initiative. It was not about saving the water, it was not about saving the whales, it was not about a feel-good topic, it was about a real hard topic in the European Union. It was about how we should deal with extremism. What should we do from our point of view, from a liberal point of society, to protect our society, to protect fundamental rights in the European Union? And this will face a lot of critique. We already faced a lot of critique, but if we are going to present it in front of the European Commission and in front of the European Parliament, there will be a lot of opposition that we will experience. And the best thing if someone is trying to stop you or to innovate or to introduce something new, the best thing is to connect to what is already existing. And that is the main idea why we combine 3 existing laws. The first area of law that is existing and very well formulated in the European Union law is the Anti-Discrimination Law. There exist a lot of directives dealing with anti-discrimination. They form a big and important part of our directive, of our draft. The second one is anti-money laundering law. It is about information theories, it's about your topic, what we can do effectively to cut the money, to cut the financial resources of extremists. And the third one is the General Data Protection Directive. Why do I mention this? This topic is something I think almost every citizen in the European Union heard of this topic in the past 3 years. And why? Because the administrative fines go up to 20 million euros or 4% of the total income of the company, global income of the past economic year. So they have introduced effective fines. We are not going to jail for breaking the General Data Protection Regulation. You have to pay a lot of money. And that is exactly what we want to do the extremist. Let me come back to the slide I skipped before. The important thing about that is we introduced a definition which is abstract. You will not find the word Muslim Brotherhood, of course not. It's an abstract legal text. It will give you a definition of extremism. The short definition of extremism is whoever is breaking or is destroying fundamental rights shall be deemed an extremist. Why is this something new? We had been speaking up to European institutions many times in the past 3 years, and one of the most positive reactions we got was this March in the European Social and Economic Committee. It was a French colleague who told us, after having listened to our lecture and what we have drafted and proposed, he gave us the response that this could be the beginning of a European answer. It was a very positive remark for us, but if you listen to it again, this could be the beginning of a European answer. I think it's actually a little bit too late. This means that they haven't any answer right now. And we are trying to give answers on that. And I think it's not an accident that a clear-cut answer is given by a European citizens' initiative, not politicians, not a political party. It is something that is proposed by European citizens. And I think this is for a reason, because I don't think that many political parties would dare to propose something like that. To give a clear-cut definition of extremism in the sense of whoever destroys, for whatever reason. We cover all kinds of extremists. Right-wing, left-wing, religious extremism, any kind of extremism. We don't care about the motivation, actually. What is important, what we want to protect, is fundamental rights. Islam is mentioned 2 times in our directive, but in a way protected. In the same sentence, being protected like Judaism, like Christianity, like any other kind of religion, or even atheism, of course. There is a fair, because it's open. The definition of extremism is fair. It covers every kind of extremism. It covers what we as human beings are interested in, have our rights protected in the future. What is the difference between our definition of extremism and the usual definition of extremism? I will give you a short answer. Usually, if you read the Secret Services reports, for example, they have a definition that is statistically. It's the 2% on the left wing and on the left extremists and right wing extremists. Yeah, it's a statistical definition. What is the problem of such a statistical definition? If the whole society shifts toward right, for example, you have not the kind of protection that you actually want, because then the complete society shifts towards right. When you in turn change the definition of extremism from statistical, from a formal point of view, to a substantial point of view, what you want to achieve, that is the protection of fundamental rights, you are even secured against a right-wing shift or a left-wing shift or any other kind of shift in Europe, because then you are guaranteeing that fundamental rights are secured even in the future. This draft is very much focused and based on the Fundamental Rights Charter, and for those of you who are interested a bit more, I can give the clue of, or the hint to Article 54. In short, this article says you must not destroy one fundamental right for the sake of another. So that is the most important rule, I guess, from the Fundamental Rights Charter. What we learned when we dealt with extremism in the past 3 years is typically, I say in general, Islamists misuse the fundamental rights of religious freedom, and the right-wingers, the white supremacy guys, misuse the right to freedom of speech. And that is what we want to stop, according to our draft, and which is perfectly in line with the existing European Union law. I already mentioned there is an abstract definition. Whoever destroys fundamental rights is to be deemed an extremist, but there is, to ease the interpretation and application of law, we have defined 27 concrete cases of extremism. I don't have the time right now to go all through these 27 cases of extremism. I just want to mention a few. Personally, I regard hate speech as the mother of all extremism because it starts aggression against a group of people. And there is an already existing definition according to legislation from the year 2008 on European law level. We extended that by groups made up by gender and sexual orientation. That should be protected according to our draft too. The 27 cases of extremism, they cover all kinds of extremists. Religious extremists, right-wingers, left-wingers, every kind of destruction of fundamental rights. Physical punishment, for example, if you unlawfully destroy the citizen's right to justice, which could easily happen in Sharia courts, threatening of protected groups, of course, acts of terrorism, jihadism. One very important one important concrete cases are prevention from education. If you actively campaign against education, there are two substantial cases which form extremism if you destroy education. Aggressive recruiting in any context. Compulsory membership, that is something that would apply for sects, for example, too. So if you force people into an association, or if you don't let them out, no matter what kind of association it is, this is deemed extremism too. We also defined various kind of support by media, by cooperation, by information, by non-dissociation, and last but not least, very important, any kind of financing or obfuscating payments as support of extremism, which can be fined up to 20 million euros or 10 times the invested amount for extremism, according to our draft. This is the centerpiece of our draft. It's a definition of extremism. It's a new kind of definition. It gives a substantial definition of extremism. We earned already a lot of positive feedback for this kind of definition and for thinking in a bit different way. Apart from this centerpiece, there's also we have to be realistic. That is my job usually, to be realistic. So we had already worked 3 years on that draft. We managed to achieve 1 million signatures. We have the presentation in front of the European Parliament or in front of the European Commission or both. and then it's up to them how they deal with that. Then our task is actually done. And as a realist, I don't want the journey to end there. So I put something in the directive, in the draft. It's a chapter on a certification. Why did I do that? Because even if they think it's a good idea to drop that draft and do nothing, we already started to work on the certification system. We started our work this year. We are trying to raise money, and I talk about not little money. I talk about 7-digit sums for the next 3 or 4 years that we want to raise, and we are in contact with companies, with trans-European, with international companies, with governments, and with schools, teachers, kindergarten, educational systems. What we want to do is to introduce a certification system. This certification system should fulfill 2 purposes. The first one is to improve the marketing, to improve the PR of those companies, of those educational institutions that are obeying fundamental rights. I think in the future it will be very important for companies if they can say we are adhering to fundamental rights 100%. If you belong to a minority, you will know that it's vital for you to know that your fundamental rights are protected. The same goes for educational institution. You're interested that your children receive a good education and not an aggressive or they receive a fundamental rights-based education, they receive a peaceful education. And our certificate that we will hopefully start by summer next year should document that these institutions adhere to the fundamental rights. That's the first point. The second point about the certificate is what we learn. This is a process of discussion. We discuss with social workers, we discuss with teachers, we discuss with parents. We get a lot of feedback. We connect those people, and we are in the mid of this process connecting people and get connections. What we earn is a lot of feedback that I think governmental institutions do not have. And as a lawyer, as a specialist in legislation, we can propose, here, you can fix your legislation here. There is a weakness here. There's a weakness there. That is Anti-Discrimination Law adding to your imprint. I call it the Love Declaration for Human Rights. We proposed to have the imprint of every website in the European Union extended by a love declaration to the human rights, because it's vital for us as human beings and human rights. And we're working together with a lot of intellectuals, activists, human rights activists, especially from Muslim countries. I have a lot of friends from Iranian, from Iraq, from Syria, who are see who of the extremists is having what kind of financial resources. We're adding transparency to extremists. Additionally, we introduce termination rights, which is important in employment context. That means if you are an employee to an extremist employer, you can cancel any education destroyed or for not being allowed to develop their life that they want to have. Thank you very much. It was a very, very rough overview. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sebastian. We have once again, please, people who have already taken this home. Let's get priority for others. Gentleman here, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sebastian Reimer. First of all, I think you made some very good points there, but I think maybe some public presentation speaking skills you could pick up on to make those points a bit more succinctly and briefly, because I think a lot of people are falling asleep there. But the points were very good, don't let me get me wrong. I just wanted to pick up on a few things you said at the start. I mean, we already, Alan
Chevalier, yes.
So Chevalier, yes, thank you. And Michael Lorch mentioned sort of at the start the fusion of politics. Sometimes we put things in abstract terms that don't necessarily match the landscape of fact and reality. And I think this is, when you talk about sort of right-wing and left-wing, actually what we see in the fusion of Islam with politics in the form of the Muslim Brotherhood is actually a form of right-wing politics. And I think it would be more accurate and better to describe it in such a way. That was one of my key points. Thanks.
Maybe allowed to answer directly. No, this is. I don't think that it makes a point to attribute some names like left wing, right wing, or religious extremism. This is only adding to confusion from my point of view. What we have to do is abstractness is guiding you the path.
But you're using these terms yourself, and that's my point. So I would say get rid of left wing, right wing entirely, and just talk about, if you're going to do it, just talk about extremism and use the definition.
Yes, but the problem is to introduce a system like we introduced in the Anti-Extremism Directive that we proposed. We have to create a link between what people know, those are the terms like left-wing, right-wing, or religious extremism. These are the terms that are already known in the public discussion. The problem is, from legal point of view, I don't think they help because they are not concrete enough.
Yeah.
I have to use them in explanation, but I won't use them in a legal context because this doesn't match the case. The case, what we want to fine with administrative laws up to 20 million euros is, for example, hate speech. We can give a concrete definition.
Define it.
Hate speech?
Yes, what is hate?
Yeah, hate speech is, for example, campaigning in a public way to foster aggression or violence against groups of people. So if you're inciting hatred, summarization of that. But it's every time you're risking the life and the health of other people by inciting violence or inciting aggressiveness or inciting hate against other people. This is hate speech.
Would you say that hate speech exists in the religion itself?
Sorry, we only have one chance. The lady, please.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Actually, your definition of human right is absolutely politically incorrect because it stops when you defend the perpetrator, when the perpetrator goes to prison. But who will...
Could you hold the microphone closer, please? Because we're recording. Thank you.
Sorry. Who will defend the victims of those perpetrators and their children, like the cases in Egypt?
Thank you.
I'm a little bit surprised, to be honest, why the definition of human rights is politically incorrect, because it is based on the Fundamental Rights Charter. I had a lot of discussions on how can we say that this idea, this notion of human rights is the correct one. Maybe that is what you mean, or maybe your question means why are the European fundamental rights not applied in Egypt, for example? No?
No.
They should be applied, actually. People would benefit from that in Egypt too. In every country they would benefit.
You defend the perpetrators.
Why? I never defended.
Yeah.
No?
You defend the right of the perpetrator. When they go to prison, they will be a prisoner of conscience. But if the victim of those perpetrators, nobody defends them.
No. Do you mean because I supported the idea of fairness? Do you mean that is the reason why I supported the perpetrator? Or how did I do that?
There is no fairness in that.
That is the reason we are working, or we should all work together on that. We should all work on that to improve the fairness in a global way. We have, of course, to start in the European Union because that is what we can influence.
Sorry, are you saying that...
Sorry, can we move on? Sorry.
No, because I'm trying to...
Sorry, excuse me,
clarify
sir. Can we move on, please, to the
Thank
next
you.
gentleman?
I'd like to thank you and all of the speakers this evening for bringing this important issue and topic. And I also would like to thank the organizers to bring this fascinating people this evening. Thank you very much. My question is, you've spent 3 years on drafting a proposal, and you've mentioned that you will send it to the European Union, and you would be probably working on something else. Do you have any extra steps to take because in the end, you have to lobby the politicians in European Union and Parliament and the Commission to turn this into a law?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Now, we had not been working 3 years on the draft. I had been working 3 months on the draft. We had been, and together with my colleague, reached. We will most probably start the final phase next week. That means that we officially propose this draft together with the 1 million signatures and the certifications we received from the national authorities to the European Commission. And then it's up to them to invite us within the next 3 months to publicly defend the proposal and to publicly represent that proposal to the public. And it could be the chance that we have, at least it's guaranteed that we have one showing up in front of the parliament. But maybe there will some other invitations follow. I don't know right now. But after that, our journey regarding the European Citizens Initiative is over, actually. That is why I mentioned that we have to think of alternatives, how we can work on, and maybe you have some ideas or you know people who could support. That is something, after this journey is over, we cannot do anything more from legal point of view. I'm very proud that we already mentioned to propose that. And we had, I told you, 85 trying this track. We will do with the community, we will do with society all over Europe, and we will introduce the certification, because I know there is a need for that. We have already had important contacts and meetings with companies, and they are very interested because they have highly international teams. That's something they really need to show we are taking care of your fundamental rights, and there is of course a lot of work to do, and it's not getting less work in the future, it's getting